Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
If you open the papers, watch your TV channels, prime time, you know that this is the election season in India. So 5 assemblies are going to have their polls from West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Assam to Puducherry. So the first 4 are states, the 5th is a union territory. So what we are doing is that as and when we have a window in the middle between so much other news that goes on, and before we start giving you cut the clutters from the field as I plan to do, I will look at each state one by one as and when an opportunity arrives. So we spoke about Tamil Nadu some time back and also Pondicherry, when the context was that the government there, Congress government there fell. It was a very interesting day to look at a place as small as Pondicherry, that is less than 2 million population. Tamil Nadu was a different story. So what we are doing is we take up each state in one of these cut the clutter episodes to give you the broader picture about that state's politics, not so much about election prospects this time, or not so much about the campaigning, but to tell you about the peculiarities, about the unique features of that state, of how the vote banks stack up there, who is how powerful, kaun kisne kitne pani mein hai, who has what prospects in general, not related to this campaign. So today is the turn of Assam. I might say that this is my favorite state out of the ones going to the polls, for the simple reason that I spent almost 3 years of my working life covering the Northeast. It was a long time back, between 1981 and 1983, but I lived there to cover the Northeast, and many of the people I knew as young idealistic student leaders became leaders subsequently. These include Sarbanand Sonowal, who is the current sitting chief minister of the BJP government in Assam. Now Assam is not a large state, it's not a small state either. So if you want to categorize India states in terms of the political power they have, then you do so by looking at the number of MPs they contribute to National Assembly. So there is a bunch of states which sent above 30 MPs. I call them the large states. These are, say, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, of course, Maharashtra, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu. And then what's been happening is that increasingly, as we have created new states, the last being Telangana and Andhra, some of these states are being cut to size. So that is the one category. Second categories are states which contribute within 20. So Karnataka, Gujarat, Rajasthan, these states at the lower side of it is, say, Odisha. These states come in 20 plus category. Then there is a bunch of states that feature in the double figures but low double figures category. So not that important, and yes, yet not unimportant. So if you want to understand Assam, think of Punjab, think of Jharkhand, think of Telangana, Chhattisgarh, Haryana. So I'm just giving you a ballpark idea of how much Assam matters in national politics. So Haryana contributes 10 MPs to Lok Sabha, Telangana contributes 17, that is the highest in this category. If you look at Assam, Assam is exactly the same number of MPs as Jharkhand, 14, and just one more than Punjab, that is 13. So you can say that Assam is a Jharkhand sized state or a Punjab sized state, but it is much more important, very important, in the sense that Punjab is very important. Punjab's importance goes way above the numbers it contributes to Lok Sabha, because it's a very important border state. Similarly, Assam is a very important border state. It is also a state with a fascinating ethnic, religious and linguistic mix. It's a state where BJP was non-existent until about 3 decades back. Nobody knew what BJP was, but now BJP dominates that state. So what I'm going to tell you today is, I will tell you about Assam's politics and also the fascinating story of how the BJP has made itself the preeminent party in Assam from being completely non-existent there less than 3 decades back. Now, as you know, I travel through elections and write an occasional series called Writings on the Wall. So, I did write Writings on the Wall the last time I traveled in Assam in an assembly election in 2016, and then I had mentioned some of these points which I had noticed, also referring back to my earlier experiences in the sense of how BJP and RSS had created a market for themselves where none existed. And I had then said, and I repeat now, that any time BJP wins an election anywhere, it's routine to give the credit to RSS. RSS has workers, RSS has cadres, RSS manages youths, RSS does all that. But we all know that 2014 election that Modi swept, or 2019 election that Modi swept, these were Modi's victories. Or earlier, late 90s, when Vajpayee won more than once, those were Vajpayee's victories. Those were not RSS's victories. But for some reason, RSS is given the credit every time. So much so that when Rajiv Gandhi got 400 plus seats in 1984, even then lots of people said, in fact, even then conventional wisdom was that on the slogan of nationalism, RSS had gone out and helped him win. So, RSS gets a lot of credit whether it deserves it or not. But in Assam, the point I am going to make is, and that is what I will explain as I lift the layers on this very complex and fascinating politics. In Assam, the RSS truly deserves the credit for having won the state for the BJP. And how did that happen? So, when I take you back 3 decades plus in the years that I used to be covering the Northeast, and the Assam movement was at its peak, and all the future leaders of Assam, including Sarbanand Sonowal, Himanta Biswa Sarma is a bit young for that. He came into that politics a bit later, even as a student. But Praful Mahanta, lots of others, they were there agitators, and this is when agitation was so strong that they had blockaded the supply of crude oil from the oil wells of Assam to the refineries in mainland India, or at that point, as was said, to refineries in India, quote unquote. This was a bad phase in the history of Assam. That is when Congress used to completely dominate Assam. Occasionally, a Janata Party came in, the left had some seats, but the BJP did not exist at all. Absolutely not. They used to be the odd person you met here and there. But as I traveled in Assam those days, I kept running into BJP pracharaks, RSS pracharaks, RSS workers. Tens of thousands of dedicated RSS pracharaks and workers had relocated themselves from various parts of the country to work in Assam. Now, they had an idea. They did not have a leader, they did not have a party. They had an idea, and I will tell you what that idea was and how did they work on that idea. So, their idea was, number one, plant the seeds of ideology, because Assam did not have RSS ideology. So, plant the seeds of ideology. Number two, co-opt the Assam movement. Now, Assam movement at this point was against foreign nationals, as they called it, which means all those who had come in from Bangladesh, definitely those after 1971, although Assam movement leaders at that point said anybody who had come in after 1967. But I am also taking you back to 1981, 82, 83. So, the RSS then had to co-opt this Assam movement leader. The key thing was Assam movement was equally vehement against both Hindu and Muslim immigrants from Bangladesh, which means all Bengali speakers, whether they Hindu or Muslim. So, part of the impulse was linguistic, part of the impulse, in fact, bulk of the impulse was ethnic, a lot of the impulse was political, a little bit of the impulse on fringes was communal, but no more than that. So, RSS had the challenge of co-opting this movement. So, how were they going to do it? The challenge for them was how to convert ethnic chauvinism or regionalism into anti-Muslim mood. Right now, until then, the mood was not anti-Muslim, it was an strong ethnic mood against anti-indigenous ethnicities, which essentially meant Bengali speakers at that point. That is what the RSS did with great success. They kept on working at it, and one of my early conversations in this context, which gave me clarity, took place with Mr. K.S. Sudarshan, who was then Bauddhik Pramukh of the RSS, the intellectual chief. Later he became the RSS's chief, Sarsang Chalak. So he had come on a visit, and the local RSS leaders sought me out, got me to meet him over tea someplace, and we had this long discussion, and he said, I can't understand these Assam agitation leaders. They don't want Bangladeshis, that's fine, I understand that. But they say they don't want Muslims as well as Hindu Bangladeshis. That means they only don't want Bengali speakers. And I said, look, their problem is ethnic, their problem is cultural, their problem is linguistic. They feel that their culture and ethnicity is now being overshadowed in their own land, rightly or wrongly, that is the belief, and they don't make a distinction between Muslims and Hindus. They are equally opposed to both if they are immigrants from Bangladesh or East Pakistan, though not necessarily from Bengal, although that sentiment is also there. So one of the lines he spoke has stuck with me, and it featured in my book on Assam, Assam Valley Divided, which was published in January of 1984, some time back. So he said, अरे भाई लेकिन इनको समझ नहीं आता कि हिंदू तो आरक्षित है. That means they don't realize, why are they not appreciating the fact that the Hindu is insecure, the Hindu feels unsafe, and if the Hindu feels unsafe in any neighboring country neighboring India, or any member of the Indian subcontinent, or by implication any country created out of the partition of India, where would that Hindu go if not to India? So if that Hindu comes to India, that Hindu has to be given protection. You can't turn that Hindu out. So you have to turn this movement's focus from all immigrants to only Muslim immigrants. That is what the RSS worked on for 30 years, and you can see that it succeeded to a great extent. Again, if I take you back to this old book of mine, I have described many of the riots and killings during the 1983 elections. That is when the Nellie massacre also took place, where you had situations where Assamese, ethnic Assamese mobs had attacked Bengali Hindu villages. Bengali Hindus were killed. There were also Assamese Hindu and Assamese Muslims also joining in the mobs that were attacking villages that had Bengali Hindus and Muslims. So that is what also helps us understand the disagreement over CAA and NRC in Assam. That a lot of people in Assam still, they don't mind NRC as long as NRC then expels everybody who is not deemed to be an Indian citizen, irrespective of their religion. CAA on the other hand says that we will keep the Hindus back, they will get citizenship because we see them as victims in the neighboring countries, but the Muslims will be sent away. That is not acceptable to those who still follow the classical old impulse of the Assam movement, but increasingly their numbers are dwindling because the RSS meanwhile moved in. That is why I say this has been a big victory of the RSS. This is the one state that RSS delivered to BJP all by itself. Now, how did they do it? First of all, they knew that they didn't have a party there. And also, Assam is not a place that takes kindly to outsiders. It's too far from the mainland. It is much too distinct. So you could not have taken also someone from another community or a non-dominant community in Assam and made that person the chief minister or leader. That doesn't work. In Haryana, you can put Mr. Manohar Lal Khattar. In Jharkhand, you could have put Raghubar Prasad. In Maharashtra, you could have still put Devendra Fadnavis, but not in Assam. So they needed leaders in Assam, and BJP did not have leaders in Assam. So what did they do? The RSS then started cherry picking the leaders from the old Assam movement, that is All Assam Students Union and All Assam Gan Sangram Parishad, which had now become Assam Gan Parishad, the political party after the accord with Rajiv Gandhi in 1985, and which was now alternating in power between Congress and themselves. The last 3 terms before this, the Congress had under Tarun Gogoi. So the Congress was very strong. So for BJP to grow there, it needed leaders. It started picking up or cherry picking leaders from the AGP, because AGP had many internal dissensions. People started leaving, they were looking around, they started picking up the key leaders from there, so much so that in the 2014 parliament elections, almost all of BJP's parliament candidates in Lok Sabha elections were former AGP leaders. So they vacuum cleaned the talent base of the AGP. AGP was then left like a rump, like a chota party under Praful Mahanta. That's why in the last assembly elections, AGP became a junior partner of the BJP. This is the party that used to rule Assam, that had swept Assam after the 85 peace accord. But now this party was a junior party. Now even that party is broken up. That party counts for even less than before. So what did the BJP do? BJP basically bought out all of the AGP and created a new leadership, including Sarbananda Sonowal. Now whatever the party may have lacked now, after taking all this leadership from the AGP, they also looked at the Congress and they found that the most important person in the Congress after the Gogois, that's the father and the son, was a man called Himanta Biswa Sarma. Now Himanta Biswa Sarma is a fascinating character. He joined ASU or became active with ASU as a student, as a school kid of 12. Then that was a very bad period in Assam because that is when frustration was growing, and what was the peaceful ASU movement was then parts of it were morphing into an insurgency under Alpha. So from ASU, a young Himanta Biswa Sarma went to Alpha. So he joined an underground organization for some time, but came back and joined the Congress party. He joined the Congress party and he showed a trait that which very few Indian politicians show, but the ones who have this trait usually tend to make it big in politics. So first time he fought an election in 2001, he decided to challenge Bhrigu Phukan. Bhrigu Phukan was the number 2 person in the Assam students movement. Bhrigu Phukan was to Praful Mahanta what you might say today Manish Sisodia is to Arvind Kejriwal. So he challenged a young Himanta Biswa Sarma 20 years ago, challenged Bhrigu Phukan in Jalukbari. Jalukbari, between the Guwahati airport and the city, is the constituency where Guwahati University is located. And Guwahati University was the Gad or the fortress of Assam movement. In fact, Praful Mahanta, Bhrigu Phukan, most of them were students at Guwahati University. So he contested from there and he won. He was now feeling frustrated in the Congress party because it looked like the Congress party had set up a succession system already. So after Mr. Tarun Gogoi, it was going to be Gaurav Gogoi. So he was impatient. He wanted to become Chief Minister now and not wait for next time or next time. So the BJP worked on him. Ram Madhav, credit to him, he reached out to him, established communication, worked on his sense of grievance, also made promises to him convincingly, and Himanta Biswa Sarma came to the BJP in 2015. When that happened, now the BJP was ready to take the state, and BJP did take the state in then 2016 assembly elections. Now BJP is going for this very reason as a front runner. Now once again, what else did the RSS do? Now RSS had one more concern. One concern was to turn this purely ethnic chauvinism into an anti-Muslim chauvinism. So they worked on it, one by isolating the more ethnically driven people into a smaller AGP and taking out all those leaders out of AGP who were willing to buy into this anti-Muslim argument. That was done. But still that strong impulse was there. Also for their own ideology, they had a contradiction. The contradiction for the RSS was that generally across the country, it was also their propaganda during the Assam movement. They joined that propaganda. Assam movement was seen as anti-national. Why? Because among the many things they did, they blocked the flow of oil from Assam's wells to the rest of the country. That was seen as an anti-national act. And there was a strong sub-nationalist feeling also at that point. There were also issues when the agitators called for a boycott or a curfew on Republic Day or Independence Day, just as happens in Kashmir now, and the whole country feels resentful, or sometimes even hold their own People's Independence Day and People's Republic Day, where they would take salute. So the RSS had to somehow turn it into a nationalistic movement, so the rest of the country would not see it like this, and the rest of the country would not then see the RSS and BJP as compromising, as forces which were not purely nationalistic according to the test that the RSS sets for them. For that, what was the anti-outsider or it started as an anti-outsider or anti-Baharagat movement, became an anti-immigrant movement. It had to become an anti-Muslim movement, and that the RSS achieved there in the course of time. And then they were helped along a great deal by the rise of a man called Badruddin Ajmal. Badruddin Ajmal is a Muslim leader. He set up his own party called AUDF. His party became to large parts of Assam, particularly lower Assam, what say Asaduddin Owaisi's party is to the inner city of Hyderabad. So he was then shown as the fear that, if you don't come along with us, then your state will be ruled by Badruddin Ajmal, because he tells you his face, his picture tells you the shape of things to come. You are getting overrun by Bengali speaking Muslims, and that is how the RSS changed the emphasis of this movement or this psychology in Assam from anti-outsider to anti-immigrant to now purely anti-Muslim. What it also did, all these developments, they broke the Congress party's vote bank hold on Assam. Until now, the Congress party, what did it work on? It knew that there were some communities where it will get some people, it will get a bulk of Muslims, it will get a large number of tribals, if not a bulk, some local tribal parties might get some, and some of Assamese Hindus. In addition, they will get a lot or most of Ahoms. They are a community in Upper Assam. The Gogois are Ahoms, for example. So they will get bulk of Ahoms, a bulk of tea labor, because tea labor had an old tradition of Congress leadership. Tea laborers are mostly people who have come from the tribal areas of East Central India, generally the areas which are now affected by Naxalism. So tea laborers, and also some of the Bengali speakers in Kachar region. Now, if you look at Assam, look at the map of Assam. So most of it is, you can see it's like Brahmaputra Valley, but there is also another valley at the other end that is called Barak Valley. Now, Barak Valley borders Bangladesh. A lot of the bulk of the ethnic stock in Barak Valley is Bengali speaking, Hindu and Muslim. So if you want to analyze Assam, the easiest way or the simplest way to do it is to look at Assam's Lok Sabha constituencies. If you look at Assam's Lok Sabha constituencies, then look at the map, you see Karimganj and Silchar. That is Barak Valley, and that is mostly Bengali speaking. Congress used to be very powerful there, the left had some seats. Now the BJP has polarized that region completely. So Muslims vote for whoever they think can defeat the BJP, but BJP gets bulk of the Bengali Hindu vote there. This is where Santosh Mohan Dev, the Congress stalwart, came from, and now his daughter is the prominent member of the Congress party from there. And also there is a constituency called Autonomous Hill Districts. Autonomous Hill Districts is a tribal reserved seat that is for the hill tribals of Assam, that is the Karbi Anglong, Haflong, that area. It's one of the most picturesque parts of our country. So that is a reserved constituency. Then you have constituencies in lower Assam along the Brahmaputra on both sides, Dhubri, Kokrajhar, Borpeta. Now Kokrajhar is a reserved seat for tribals, and there are lots of boros there, but still the Muslim vote bank there is very strong, and this is mostly Muslim immigrant vote bank. So it is one of those seats which even in the 2019 Modi sweep, BJP had lost. So BJP had lost one of these seats, Dhubri, to Badruddin Ajmal. He became the only MP from his party in this parliament because the Muslim vote stayed with him. The consequence of that was that Muslim vote had gone away from the Congress. So what happened was that because BJP was able to turn the emphasis of the Assam movement, a lot of the ethnic Assamese shifted to the BJP. Then BJP reached out to some tribal parties, particularly Bodo parties, and got the tribal vote to shift away from the Congress. RSS did a lot of work in the tea gardens, so some of the tea garden vote also shifted, and then came AUDF and Ajmal, and they took away a lot of the Congress's vote. In the last election, Congress was afraid of joining hands with Ajmal coalition, worrying that if we are seen to be cohabiting with Ajmal, what will happen to our Hindu vote elsewhere? So what happens in that case is what happens always, na khuda hi mila na wisale sanam, you neither got the Hindu vote nor the Muslim vote. This time Congress has gone ahead and taken the risk of signing up with AUDF and Badruddin Ajmal, so Muslim vote will not get divided. If you look at the rest of Assam, then Assam generally would be divided into the south bank of Brahmaputra and north bank of Brahmaputra. South bank is more populous, the bigger cities are there. So on south bank, you will then have Guwahati, Nagaon, Jorhat, Kaliabor, Dibrugarh. Dibrugarh and Jorhat are again constituencies in which tea garden labour plays a big role. Kaliabor is the Gogoi family's pocket borough. The father used to win it, son has won it now. And then on the north bank, you have Tezpur, Mangaldoy and Lakhimpur. In most of these seats, AUDF does not matter. In most of the seats, in these seats, it's a straight fight between the Congress and the BJP. And you can then break it down to assembly seats. So that is how the story in Assam now stacks up, and that is how I thought I will explain to you how BJP made this, created this dramatic success in a state where it had no foothold, no presence, no nothing.